Good afternoon, fellow anti-novelists. I want to begin this module with a little disclaimer. Oh, let's move my lunch. I'll eat that later after we're done. I'm going out on a limb, and I know I am, but hear me out. Much of the theory of modern fiction writing is either tied to or revolves around script writing in some way. There are a lot of very popular systems that use the writing and scripting of movies as a way to get into your fiction. I am not of that opinion. I know that's not popular and I'm going out on a limb, but hear me out. Movies are meant to be experienced visually. That's fundamentally their nature. Fiction, however, is meant to be read. It's nothing but words on the page. So fundamentally, they depart in the way that we experience them. Can you use screenwriting and movies and movie pacing as perhaps a guide to drive your reader through the story? Absolutely. Use all the tools that you have at hand. I'm not discounting anything, but I'm cautioning you away from exclusively relying on writing systems that use movies and the progress points of movies in order to inform your story. With that said, we'll take that as our first principle, and we're going to dive in to the fundamental elements of Act 1. So you know that I work in a 4-act story structure, so this is roughly the first quarter of your book. 2 key pieces are you need to show the world as it exists with your main character or characters being fully fleshed out, fully living in their natural world characters, okay? In order to pull your reader into your story, you need to disturb those characters somehow. You need to upend their world. You need to disturb it. Something needs to happen that, number 1, makes your reader care about your character, and then number 2, makes your reader fear for them because something has happened, okay? Something has upended their world, and now they have to deal with it. That's what makes a good story. How are they going to deal with this? It doesn't matter what genre you're in at this point. You just need to show your character and show some kind of conflict that makes your reader curious and invested and rooting for them to see how they handle it. So let's talk about a couple of the structural elements. 1, you've got acts, which we know I work in a 4-act structure. Then you've got scenes. Okay, if you go back to our tracker, our plot cheat sheet, you've got a scene on one side and you've got a sequel on the other. So for example, the opening incident of my book is where my main character meets the Voynich manuscript. So that would be my scene here. So I might just sketch out meets the Voynich manuscript, okay? Then over here under the sequel, what consequently happens as a result of that? Well, number 1, it kind of freaks her out because she has an experience that's a little otherworldly when she picks up this book, and that's what disturbs her world. And that's what is interesting, you would hope, for the reader. Holy moly, this crazy thing just happened when she opened this book and looked through it. What does all this mean? Okay, so you're setting up a mystery from the very beginning. So the sequel to that is you're going to show her reacting, right? How does she react? What happens? Does she tell a friend? Does she ask them for advice? Does she go to the internet and start searching? In what way is your character reacting to whatever this incident or this disturbance or this confrontation was early on in the book that uses scenes to set up driving your reader through the story? So after you've nailed acts and scenes, then you can distill those down even further into things that we call beats, or you can call them story units. Those are just the things that stack up to create a scene, okay? So at that point, you're thinking, okay, she's going to react in this way, and that reaction is going to lead to this action taking place, which is maybe she talks to a friend about it, and then that is going to lead to her friend is going to have either a positive or a negative reaction to what she's told them. So do you see how you start to stack out the units of your scenes to fill out what's necessary for the story? That's simply how you do it. It's much easier to think in terms of what happens, how does she react, how does her reaction play out either alone or with somebody else, If it's positive, it could be this, and if it's negative, it could be that. So that's how you start asking yourself the questions that grow your story out. So then we look at the elements of plot. So we've met our hero, we've seen her in her normal world, we've seen a disturbance or something that makes the reader go, holy moly, what's going to happen next? And that brings you to the other events of Act 1. So as you drive your character, and we're only focusing on one now, not multiple main characters, as you drive your character through how they're responding to whatever has happened, that's how you get them to that first plot point, okay? So your first plot point essentially is a gateway that takes your reader into Act 2. It's a fundamental change. It's an attitude change. It's a situation change. It's a status change. It's something as a result of these scenes and sequels that causes your main character to change and be pushed into, even in spite of their own protest, the rest of the story. So as I continue breaking this down into bite-sized pieces, in the next video, we're going to tackle half a dozen things that could be used to populate out this first part of the story. So what is your assignment? Get cracking on the first scenes, the first things that show your character in their natural world being themselves fully fleshed out, and that then challenge them with some kind of conflict that forces them to be in jeopardy. The conflict is there, they have to deal with it, and then you start peppering in your other characters and scenes in order to start fleshing out what's happening in the story. So I hope that was helpful. We will pick up where I just left off in the next video, and we will start looking individually at the 8 or 12 things that comprise the half a dozen scenes and sequels that make up Act 1. So I will see you in the next video.